My ex was after my life, but Mafia boss came for me, saved and caught my heart. The cold stone pressed against my back beneath the Brooklyn Bridge. Sean Horton's hand clamped over my mouth, cutting off my scream. The East River churned behind us while Manhattan's skyline glittered across the water, beautiful and uncaring. My emerald green coat was torn at the shoulder. My dark hair had fallen loose, and mascara-stained tears streaked down my face. This was it. This was how my story would end. Then a voice cut through the darkness. Deep, commanding, dangerous. Let her go. A man stepped from the shadows. Powerfully built, over 6 feet tall, with muscles that showed he was no stranger to violence. Intricate tattoos covered his forearms beneath rolled-up sleeves. Dark eyes locked onto Sean with lethal promise. This was Richardson Lanford, a man whose name made dangerous people nervous. I didn't know it then, pressed against that cold stone with death breathing down my neck, but the stranger saving my life would become the man who captured my heart completely. I didn't know that running from one dangerous man would lead me straight into the arms of another. But this time, everything would be different. How did a terrified woman running for her life end up finding the deepest love she'd ever known? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. And please, hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe to our channel because tomorrow we're dropping another powerful story you won't want to miss. Your support means everything and helps us bring you more incredible stories like this one. 3 months earlier, my life in New York City looked perfect from the outside. I had a small apartment on Bedford Avenue in Williamsburg, with windows that overlooked the tree-lined street. I worked at a publishing house in Dumbo, editing manuscripts and living the dream I'd always wanted. But the truth was far from perfect. Every morning started the same way. I'd check every lock on my door 3 times before leaving. I'd change the route to work again, taking different streets each day. This week, I walked through McCarran Park, where the fall leaves painted the ground in shades of gold and crimson. Couples sat on benches, sharing coffee and conversation. Children played near the playground while their parents watched with easy smiles. Life moved around me in beautiful, normal patterns that I could only observe from behind the wall of my fear. I kept 3 burner phones in rotation, disposing of each one after 2 weeks. My real phone stayed powered off in a drawer at home. I'd learned the hard way that Sean could track anything connected to my name. The texts had started 2 weeks after I arrived in New York. I still remember the shock of seeing his name appear on what I thought was a secure number. I miss you, Bridget. We can work this out. I deleted it immediately, changed my number, and told myself I was safe. But the messages kept coming, finding me no matter how many times I switched phones. You belong with me. You know that. Why are you making this so difficult? I can give you everything. Just come home. The pleading messages lasted about a month. When I didn't respond, they changed. You're embarrassing me. People are asking questions. I know you're in New York. Did you really think you could hide from me? If I can't have you, nobody will. That last message made my hands shake so badly I dropped the phone. I knew Sean meant every word. My story with Sean Horton began 3 years ago in Portland, Oregon. I'd been working at a small gallery in the Pearl District, surrounded by art and creativity, living a quiet life that made me happy. The gallery was hosting an opening for a local sculptor, and the space was filled with Portland's art community. Wine flowed, conversations hummed, and I was in my element. That's when I met him. Sean walked in wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His light brown hair was styled with expensive product, and his smile could have sold magazines. He moved through the gallery like he owned it, confident and magnetic. When he stopped in front of the piece I was standing near, he asked my opinion with genuine interest in his voice. "What do you think? Does it speak to you?" We talked for an hour. He was charming, successful, and attentive in ways that made me feel special. He owned a real estate development company and spoke passionately about transforming Portland's neighborhoods. He asked about my work, my dreams, my favorite books. He listened like every word I said mattered. By the end of the night, he had my number. The first 3 months were magical. Sean took me to the best restaurants in Portland. We'd drive out to the Columbia River Gorge on weekends, hiking to waterfalls and talking about everything. He brought me flowers for no reason. He remembered small details I'd mentioned in passing. He made me feel cherished. Looking back now, I can see the red flags I missed. The way he tensed when I mentioned male colleagues. How he always wanted to know exactly where I was. The subtle comments about my clothes being too revealing or my friendships being too close. But love makes you blind, and I was falling hard. The mask started slipping around month 6. It began with questions. Casual at first, then increasingly pointed. "Who was that guy you were talking to? Why didn't you answer my call right away? What do you mean you're going out with friends? I thought we had plans." I made excuses for him. He was stressed with work. He just loved me and wanted to spend time together. He was worried about me in the city. Every justification I created kept me trapped a little longer. The isolation happened gradually. Sean would pick fights before I was supposed to meet friends, making me cancel plans to smooth things over. He'd show up at my gallery unannounced, watching who I talked to. My friends started to drift away, tired of the constant cancellations and the way I'd changed. My family in Seattle noticed something was wrong, but I assured them everything was fine. By the time I realized I was trapped, I'd lost most of my support system. The first time Sean grabbed me too hard, leaving bruises on my arm, he cried afterward. He swore it would never happen again. He blamed stress, his childhood, anything but himself. He bought me an expensive bracelet to cover the marks and promised to get help. He never did. The incidents escalated. A shove during an argument. Thrown objects that narrowly missed my head. His hand around my throat while he told me I was his and his alone. Each time, he'd apologize. Each time, he'd promise to change. Each time, I believed him a little less. The night I finally left, Sean had destroyed my phone during a rage about a coworker who'd complimented my work. Standing in my destroyed apartment, looking at the man I'd once loved transformed into someone I didn't recognize, I made my choice. The next day, while he was at work, I packed one suitcase and left everything else behind. I went to my sister's house in Seattle first, but Sean found me within a week. He showed up at her door with flowers and tears, begging for another chance. When that didn't work, the threat started. He knew people, he said. People who could make problems disappear. If I didn't come back, he'd make sure I regretted it. The restraining order I filed meant nothing to a man with Sean's resources. He had money, connections, and an obsession that wouldn't quit. So I ran again, this time to New York City, where I could disappear into millions of people. For 3 months, I thought I'd succeeded. Sean Horton was the kind of handsome that opened doors. Tall, well-built from expensive gym memberships, with a smile that charmed investors and seduced women. He wore suits that cost thousands of dollars and drove cars that announced his success. His watch alone could have paid my rent for 6 months. Everything about him screamed wealth and power. But his eyes told the truth. Cold, calculating, possessive. When Sean looked at you, he wasn't seeing a person. He was seeing property, something to own and control. I'd mistaken that intensity for passion once. I'd never make that mistake again. Now, walking through Brooklyn's beautiful fall afternoon, watching couples hold hands and families enjoy the weather, I wondered how long I could keep running. How many cities would I have to flee before Sean finally gave up? Or would this chase only end one way? The crisp October air should have been refreshing, but it just made me pull my coat tighter, as if I could protect myself from what was coming. Deep down, I knew Sean would find me again. It was only a matter of time. I just didn't know that when he did, everything would change in ways I never could have expected. The mist rolled in from the East River as I left work that evening, turning the Dumbo streets into something almost dreamlike. The cobblestones were slick under my feet as I walked past the old industrial buildings that had been transformed into luxury lofts and trendy businesses. This neighborhood had become one of my favorites in Brooklyn, with its mix of history and modern energy. I took the route through Brooklyn Bridge Park, wanting to stretch out the walk home despite the gathering darkness. The vintage carousel sat quiet for the evening, its painted horses frozen mid-gallop. Ahead of me, the Brooklyn Bridge rose majestically against the darkening sky, its cables creating geometric patterns that artists love to photograph. Across the water, Manhattan's financial district sparkled with 1,000 lights, the skyscrapers reflecting off the river's surface. For a moment, I let myself enjoy it. The misty evening wrapped around me like a soft blanket. A few joggers passed by, their footsteps rhythmic against the pathway. A couple stood at the railing, taking selfies with the Manhattan skyline behind them. Normal people doing normal things. I wanted so badly to be one of them. That's when I heard the footsteps behind me. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. Lots of people use this path. But these footsteps matched my pace exactly. When I slowed down, they slowed down. When I sped up, they sped up. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I veered toward the more populated area near the bridge entrance, where there would be more people, more witnesses, more safety. But the footsteps followed, getting closer now. Close enough that I could hear breathing behind me. "Bridget!" That voice froze the blood in my veins. I knew it better than my own. It had whispered sweet words and screamed terrible ones. It had promised love and delivered pain. "Sean!" I stopped walking but couldn't turn around. My body had locked up, every muscle rigid with fear. "Did you really think you could run from me, Bridget?" Now he was beside me, and I had no choice but to look at him. Sean looked exactly as I remembered, but somehow worse. His light brown hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place despite the misty evening. He wore a designer coat in navy blue that probably cost more than everything in my apartment combined. Cashmere, if I had to guess, tailored to fit his frame perfectly. Underneath, I could see his pressed white shirt and silk tie. The expensive watch on his wrist caught the light from the street lamps, the kind of timepiece that announced success and power to anyone who knew watches. He was impeccably put together, as always, but his eyes held a wildness I'd never seen before. They darted over my face, my body, taking in every detail like a starving man looking at food. "I've been patient," Sean continued, his voice smooth but with an edge underneath. "I've given you time to come to your senses. 3 months, Bridget. 3 months of waiting, of wondering, of looking like a fool because my girlfriend just disappeared." "I'm not your girlfriend," I managed to say, though my voice shook. "I haven't been for a long time." His laugh was cold, bitter. "Is that what you tell yourself? That you can just leave and it's over? That's not how this works. We belong together. You know that." "Sean, please." I tried to keep my voice calm, reasonable. "We're not good for each other. We both know that. You need to let me go and move on with your life. Move on." His hand shot out and gripped my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to hurt. I don't move on from what's mine, Bridget. And you are mine. You've always been mine. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. People still walked nearby, but not close enough to notice what was happening in the growing darkness. Not close enough to help. I know everything, Sean said, pulling me closer. His expensive cologne filled my nostrils, bringing back memories I'd tried to bury. I know you work at that little publishing house on Water Street. I know you leave at 6:50 most evenings. I know you live in that pathetic apartment in Williamsburg. I know you eat lunch at the same cafe 3 times a week. I know you're alone, Bridget. No friends, no boyfriend, no one who cares if you disappear. The words hit me like physical blows. He'd been watching me for weeks, maybe longer, learning my routines, my habits, waiting for the perfect moment. How did you find me? I whispered. Does it matter? Sean's smile was cruel. I have resources you can't even comprehend. Money opens doors, Bridget. It buys information. It buys loyalty. It buys whatever I need. Did you really think changing your name on a lease and getting a burner phone would stop me? His other hand came up to my face, touching my cheek in a gesture that might have looked tender to anyone watching from a distance. But his touch made my skin crawl. I've missed you, he said softly. Every single day. Do you know what it's like, loving someone who runs away, who embarrasses you in front of everyone? People ask me about you, Bridget. They want to know where you went, why we broke up, and I have to smile and make excuses while inside I'm dying. That's not love, Sean, I said, finding some courage from somewhere deep inside. Love doesn't control. Love doesn't hurt. Love doesn't track someone across the country and stalk them. His expression changed in an instant, the fake tenderness replaced by rage. Don't tell me what love is. I've given you everything. I made you somebody. That gallery job, that tiny apartment, that nothing life you had before me. I elevated you. I made you special. And this is how you repay me. Let me go. I tried to pull away again, but he held firm. No. His voice dropped to something dangerous. We're going to talk. Really talk. Somewhere private where you can't run away again. He started pulling me toward the shadows beneath the bridge, away from the pathways where people walked. I tried to dig my heels in, but he was stronger, and the slick cobblestones gave me no traction. Sean, stop. You're hurting me. Good, he hissed. Maybe pain is the only thing that gets through to you. Maybe that's what you need to understand how serious I am. We were in the shadows now, the massive stone pillars of the Brooklyn Bridge towering above us. The East River churned behind us, dark and cold. The sounds of the city seemed distant here, muffled. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might explode. I tried to scream, but Sean's hand clamped over my mouth before I could make a sound. His other arm wrapped around me, holding me against him with crushing force. I struggled, kicking and twisting, but he was too strong. Shh, he whispered in my ear, his breath hot against my skin. Stop fighting. You're just making this harder on yourself. We're going to my car, and we're going to drive somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can discuss our future without interruption. And if you try to run or scream, I promise you'll regret it. Tears streamed down my face. This was it. This was how my story ended. Not in freedom and safety like I'd hoped, but dragged back into the nightmare I'd tried so hard to escape. Sean would take me somewhere isolated, and no one would even know I was missing until I didn't show up for work tomorrow. My apartment building neighbors barely knew my name. My coworkers were friendly but not friends. I had no family in the city. Sean was right about one thing. I was alone. The fight drained out of my body as despair took over. My legs went weak, and only Sean's grip kept me upright. He felt the change and loosened his hand over my mouth slightly. "That's better," he said. "See? You just needed to calm down and remember who's in charge here. Everything will be fine once we get you home where you belong." I closed my eyes, unable to look at the river or the bridge or the beautiful city I'd thought would save me. In the distance, I could still hear life continuing. Laughter, car horns, music from somewhere. The world kept turning while mine stopped. But I was wrong. Because that's when I heard the voice that would change everything. "I suggest you let the lady go." The voice came from the darkness, deep and commanding. It wasn't loud, but it carried absolute authority. The kind of voice that expected obedience and usually got it. Sean's grip on me loosened slightly. I felt his body tense, his head turning toward the source of the interruption. My eyes were still adjusting to the shadows, but I could make out a figure approaching us with measured, confident steps. As he moved into the light from a nearby street lamp, I got my first real look at the man who'd just spoken. He was tall, over 6 feet easily, with a kind of build that came from real physical work, not just gym sessions. Broad shoulders filled out a black leather jacket that looked worn and lived in. Underneath, he wore a simple dark shirt that stretched across a muscular chest. Everything about his physique suggested power held in check, like a coiled spring ready to release. His face stopped me cold. Strong jawline, dark hair that fell slightly tousled across his forehead, and a distinctive scar that cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a dangerous edge. But it was his eyes that captured my attention. Dark, almost black in the dim light, they seemed to see everything at once. They swept over the scene, assessing the situation in seconds, calculating and intense. What struck me most were his arms. From what I could see beneath the pushed-up sleeves of his jacket, both forearms were covered in intricate tattoos. Not the random designs some people collected, but what looked like a carefully crafted story told in ink. I could make out images that seemed to flow into each other, creating a narrative I couldn't quite read from this distance. The detail was stunning, even in the poor light. He moved like someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. Each step was purposeful, controlled. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty, just calm, deadly confidence. "This doesn't concern you," Sean said, but I heard something new in his voice. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. The stranger took another step closer, and now I could see his face more clearly. His expression was neutral, almost bored, but his eyes held something that made my breath catch. Danger, yes, but also a kind of focused intensity that suggested he didn't make idle threats. "You're right," he said, his voice still calm. "It doesn't concern me, but I'm making it my concern. Let her go. Now." Sean's hand tightened on me for a moment, and I felt his indecision. Part of him wanted to assert dominance, to show he wasn't intimidated. But something about this man made even Sean hesitate. "Do you know who I am?" Sean demanded, trying to inject authority into his voice. "I have connections, resources. You don't want to make an enemy of me." The stranger's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. It was colder than that, more calculating. "I know exactly who you are, Sean Horton. Small-time real estate developer from Portland who thinks money makes him untouchable. You like to hurt women who can't fight back. You hide behind lawyers and restraining orders you ignore. You're a coward who preys on fear." Each word was delivered with surgical precision, cutting through Sean's bluster like a knife through paper. I felt Sean's body go rigid beside me. "The question is," the stranger continued, taking another step forward, "do you know who I am?" The change in Sean was immediate and dramatic. His grip on me went slack. His breathing quickened. When he spoke, his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. Richardson Lanford. The stranger, Richardson, nodded once. Smart man. I'd heard that name before, whispered in the coffee shops and bars of Brooklyn. Richardson Lanford was the kind of man people spoke about quietly, with a mixture of respect and fear. He controlled things in this borough, though exactly what those things were, no one seemed willing to say out loud. He was dangerous, powerful, and not someone you crossed if you valued your health and happiness. And right now, he was standing between me and Sean. "Here's what's going to happen," Richardson said, his voice still perfectly calm. "You're going to let her go. You're going to walk away and get on the next flight back to Portland. You're going to forget this woman exists. You're not going to call her, text her, think about her, or even dream about her. As far as you're concerned, she died tonight. You can't just—" Sean started to protest. Richardson cut him off with a look. Just a look, but it silenced Sean completely. "If I hear you've so much as Googled her name," Richardson continued, "we'll have a very different conversation. And trust me, Sean, you don't want that conversation. I make my living dealing with problems. I'm very good at making problems disappear. Permanently." The threat hung in the air, unmistakable. Richardson wasn't bluffing, and Sean knew it. I could feel it in the way Sean's body had gone completely still, the way his breathing had changed. "Do we understand each other?" Richardson asked. Sean released me so suddenly I stumbled. Richardson was there instantly, his hand steadying me without grabbing or controlling. Just support, firm but gentle. "We understand," Sean said, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me one last time, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Defeat. For the first time since I'd known him, Sean Horton had been beaten. Not by me, but by someone who operated on a level he couldn't compete with. "This isn't over," Sean said, but the words had no conviction behind them. "Yes," Richardson said quietly, "it is." Sean turned and walked away, his expensive shoes clicking against the cobblestones. His perfect posture had slumped, his confident stride reduced to something closer to a retreat. Within moments, he disappeared into the misty evening, swallowed by the darkness. I stood there, trembling from head to toe, unable to process what had just happened. My legs felt like they might give out at any moment. My breath came in short, sharp gasps that I couldn't seem to control. Richardson turned to me, and up close, he was even more imposing. But his dark eyes, which had been so cold when looking at Sean, softened when they met mine. "Are you hurt?" he asked. I shook my head, not trusting my voice to work. Now that the immediate danger had passed, the shock was setting in. My whole body shook, and tears started falling faster than before. "It's okay," Richardson said gently. "You're safe now. He's gone." "How did you?" I finally managed to speak. "Why did you?" "I was in the neighborhood," he said simply. "Wrong place at the right time. Or maybe right place at the right time, depending on how you look at it." He shrugged off his leather jacket and draped it around my shoulders. It was warm from his body heat and smelled like leather and something else, something clean and masculine. The weight of it was oddly comforting. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you away from here. There's a bench just up ahead where you can sit down." He didn't grab me or force me. He simply gestured in the direction he meant, giving me the choice to follow. After what I'd just experienced with Sean, that small gesture of respect meant everything. I followed him to a bench that overlooked the river. My legs were still shaking, and I sank onto the seat gratefully. Richardson sat beside me, but not too close. He maintained a respectful distance, his body angled toward me but not crowding my space. "Take your time," he said. "Breathe. You're safe." I tried to follow his advice, focusing on taking slow, deep breaths. The panic was still there, right beneath the surface, but having him nearby helped somehow. Maybe it was knowing that Sean was gone, that for the first time in 3 years, someone had actually stopped him. "Thank you," I whispered. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." "Don't think about it," Richardson said firmly but kindly. "What matters is that it didn't happen. You're okay." I looked at him properly for the first time since sitting down. In the better light here, I could see more details. The scar through his eyebrow was old, well-healed. His tattoos were even more intricate than I'd first thought. I could see what looked like roses intertwined with thorns, geometric patterns that held meaning, words in a script I couldn't quite read. Each element seemed to flow into the next, creating a cohesive whole that was almost beautiful. His face was hard, the kind of face that had seen and done things most people only heard about in stories. But when he looked at me, there was a gentleness there that seemed at odds with everything else about him. "I'm Richardson," he said. "Richardson Lanford." "Bridget," I replied. "Bridget Parkin." "Bridget," he repeated, and somehow my name sounded different in his voice. "Are you staying nearby? I'll make sure you get home safely." Every instinct told me to say no, to maintain my independence, to not trade one dangerous man for another. Because Richardson Lanford was dangerous. That much was obvious. The way he'd faced down Sean, the threat in his voice, the reputation that preceded him, all of it screamed danger. But there was something else there too. Something in his eyes, in the careful way he held himself, in the respect he'd shown by giving me space and choices. He'd saved me when he had no obligation to do so. He'd stood up to Sean not for personal gain, but because it was the right thing to do. "Williamsburg," I heard myself say. "On Bedford Avenue." Richardson nodded and pulled out his phone, making a quick call. "I need a car at the Brooklyn Bridge Park entrance. 5 minutes." He ended the call and looked back at me. "My driver will take us. I give you my word, Bridget. You're safe with me. I'm not like him." And somehow, sitting there in the misty evening with this dangerous stranger beside me, I believed him. True to his word, a sleek black car pulled up within minutes. It was understated but clearly expensive, the kind of vehicle that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. A driver emerged and opened the back door without a word, his face professionally neutral. Richardson stood and offered me his hand. I hesitated for just a moment before taking it. His grip was firm but careful, and he helped me to my feet with a gentleness that surprised me given his obvious strength. "After you," he said, gesturing to the car. I slid into the back seat, the leather cool and smooth beneath me. Richardson settled in beside me, maintaining that same respectful distance. The door closed, cocooning us in quiet luxury. The driver pulled away from the curb smoothly, heading into Brooklyn's nighttime streets. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. I stayed out the window, watching the city pass by. We drove past the Brooklyn Academy of Music, its grand facade lit up against the night sky. The streets were alive with people heading to shows, restaurants, bars. Life continued as normal for everyone else while my world had just been turned upside down. "How long has he been following you?" Richardson asked quietly. I turned to look at him. In the dim light of the car's interior, his face was shadowed, making him look even more mysterious. But his eyes were focused on me with genuine concern. "I don't know exactly," I admitted. "The text started about 2 weeks after I got to New York. 2 months ago, maybe. But tonight he said he's been watching me for weeks. He knew where I work, where I live, my routines, everything. Richardson's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. How long were you together? 3 years. Well, together for 2.5. The last 6 months I was just trying to survive until I could leave. The words came easier than I expected. Maybe it was the darkness, or the fact that Richardson was a stranger, or that he'd already seen me at my most vulnerable. I left Portland 6 months ago. Went to Seattle first, but he found me. New York was supposed to be my fresh start. He won't bother you again, Richardson said with absolute certainty. How can you be sure? I asked. He has money, connections. He's obsessed. Because I have more of both, Richardson said simply. And unlike him, people actually fear me for good reason. Sean Horton is a small man playing at being dangerous. I don't play. The words should have frightened me, but instead, they brought a strange sense of relief. For months I'd been running from Sean's threats, knowing he had resources I couldn't match. Having someone more powerful on my side felt like finally being able to breathe after holding my breath underwater. We turned onto the tree-lined streets of Fort Greene, passing beautiful brownstones with lights glowing in their windows. Families inside, probably having dinner or watching television. Normal lives lived without fear. What made you help me? I asked. You don't know me. This wasn't your problem. Richardson was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. I have a sister, younger than me. A few years ago, she was in a situation similar to yours. Different man, same kind of control, same kind of fear. I helped her get out, made sure the guy understood that going near her again would be the last mistake he ever made. His voice held an edge when talking about his sister's situation, a protective anger that was clearly still fresh despite the time that had passed. After that, I made myself a promise, he continued. If I ever saw another woman in that situation, I'd step in. I have power in this city. I might as well use it for something that matters. We drove through Clinton Hill now, more brownstones lining the quiet streets. The neighborhood had a peaceful quality, worlds away from the chaos I'd just experienced. I appreciate what you did, I said carefully, but I need you to understand something. I've spent 3 years having my choices taken away, having someone control where I go, who I talk to, what I do. I can't go from one cage to another, no matter how nice the bars are. Richardson turned to look at me fully, and I saw respect in his eyes. I'm not offering you a cage, Bridget. I'm offering you protection. There's a difference. You live your life however you want. I'll just make sure Sean doesn't interfere with it. You won't even know I'm watching unless you need me. Why would you do that? You don't owe me anything. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. And because I suspect you've had too many people in your life do the wrong thing. Someone should balance that out. We entered Williamsburg now, the streets busier here with the neighborhood's young, creative energy. Vintage stores, coffee shops, and bars lined Bedford Avenue. This was my neighborhood, the place I'd chosen to rebuild my life. The car slowed as we approached my building, a modest walk-up sandwich between a cafe and a used bookstore. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. My space, my sanctuary. Richardson's driver pulled to the curb and came around to open my door. I started to slip off Richardson's leather jacket to return it, but he stopped me. Keep it tonight, he said. You can give it back another time. Will there be another time? I asked before I could stop myself. Something flickered across Richardson's face. Surprise, maybe, or hope. That's entirely up to you. But I meant what I said about protection. Whether you want to see me again or not, I'll make sure you're safe." We both got out of the car, and Richardson walked me to my building's entrance. The street was quiet at this hour, just a few people walking dogs or heading home from late dinners. At my door, I turned to face him. Up close, he was even more imposing, but in a way that made me feel protected rather than threatened. There was something in his eyes as he looked at me, something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't the hungry possession I'd seen in Sean's gaze. It was softer, more complex. "Thank you, Richardson," I said, "for everything. You saved my life tonight." "You're welcome, Bridget." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I know my reputation. I know what people say about me, and most of it is probably true. But I want you to know that with you, tonight, there was no agenda, no expectation. You needed help, and I was there to give it. That's all." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. This dangerous man with his tattoos and his reputation and his obvious power was being vulnerable with me, showing me something real beneath the tough exterior. "I believe you," I said, and I meant it. Richardson nodded, satisfied. "Get some rest. Lock your door. And if anything happens, anything at all that makes you uncomfortable, you have my word that I'll handle it." He turned to leave, and I watched him walk back to his car. The way he moved, the confidence in every step, the power held carefully in check. He was dangerous, yes, but maybe not all danger was bad. Maybe some danger existed to protect rather than harm. The next morning, I found a package outside my door. Inside was a new smartphone, top of the line, and a note written in bold, masculine handwriting. "Your old phone was probably being tracked. This one is secure. My number is programmed in. Use it if you need anything. No obligation, no strings. Just safety. Al." I stood in my doorway holding that phone, emotions flooding through me. Gratitude for his continued care. Fear of trusting again, of letting someone new into my life. Attraction to this complex man who'd appeared out of nowhere and changed everything. And underneath it all, something I hadn't felt in so long I almost didn't recognize it. Hope. Hope that maybe I could stop running. Hope that maybe there were good men in the world who used their power to help rather than hurt. Hope that my story didn't have to be defined by fear and survival. I saved Richardson's number in the new phone, my fingers hovering over the keys. Should I text him? Thank him? Or would that seem too eager, too dependent? In the end, I sent a simple message. "Thank you for the phone. And for last night. I mean it." His response came within minutes. "You're welcome. Be safe, Bridget." I spent the rest of that day in a daze, going through the motions of my Sunday routine but unable to stop thinking about what had happened. Every time I remembered Sean's hands on me, his threats, his obsession, I also remembered Richardson stepping out of the shadows. The certainty in his voice when he'd told Sean to leave, the gentleness in his hands when he'd steadied me. Part of me knew I should be more cautious. Richardson Lanford was dangerous. Whatever he did for a living, it wasn't exactly legal. Getting involved with him, even just accepting his protection, could lead me into a different kind of trouble. But another part of me, the part that had been living in fear for so long, felt something shift. For the first time in 3 years, I had someone on my side who was stronger than Sean. Someone who'd stood up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself. Someone who'd offered help without demanding anything in return. As night fell over Williamsburg and the city lights began to glow outside my window, I realized something important. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if Richardson would become a friend, a protector, or something more. I didn't know if Sean would really stay away or if there were more battles ahead. But for the first time since I'd fled Portland, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone anymore. And that made all the difference. A week passed before I saw Richardson again. 7 days of relative peace, of no threatening messages, no sense of being watched. 7 days of checking my new phone more often than I wanted to admit, wondering if he'd reach out. On Sunday afternoon, I decided to work at the small cafe in Prospect Park. The weather was perfect for late October, crisp air, brilliant sunshine, and the trees showing off their finest autumn colors. The long meadow stretched out before me, families scattered across the grass with picnic blankets and laughter. Children chased each other while their parents watched with easy smiles. Dogs ran free in the designated areas. It was the kind of peaceful scene that made Brooklyn feel like home. I sat at one of the outdoor tables with my laptop and a manuscript I was editing, a story about a woman finding herself after loss. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd just ordered my second coffee when a shadow fell across my table. "Is this seat taken?" I looked up to find Richardson standing there, and my heart did something complicated in my chest. He looked different in daylight, less like the dangerous savior from that misty night and more like an ordinary man enjoying a Sunday in the park. He wore dark jeans and a simple black t-shirt that showcased those tattooed arms. His leather jacket was gone, replaced by a casual confidence that was somehow more attractive than the intimidating presence he'd projected before. "Please," I said, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. Richardson sat down, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. In the sunlight, I could see details I'd missed that night. The way his dark hair fell slightly across his forehead, the laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more than his reputation might indicate. The intricate detail of his tattoos. I could see now that one arm featured roses intertwined with thorns, while the other had geometric patterns mixed with what looked like quotes or phrases in elegant script. "I hope this isn't weird," he said. "Me showing up here. I wasn't following you or anything. I actually come to this cafe sometimes. It's one of my favorite spots in Brooklyn." "It's not weird," I assured him, and I meant it. Seeing him here felt natural somehow, like a continuation of something we'd started. Though I have to admit, I didn't picture you as a Sunday afternoon in the park kind of guy. Richardson smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "What kind of guy did you picture me as?" "Honestly, I don't know. Someone who lives entirely at night, maybe. All business and danger." "I'm human," he said with a shrug. "I like sunshine and coffee and watching people be happy. The other stuff is just what I do, not who I am." A server came by, and Richardson ordered an espresso. When she left, he nodded at my laptop. "Working on a Sunday? That's dedication." "I'm editing a manuscript," I explained. "It's actually the best part of my job, getting to help shape someone's story, finding the heart of what they are trying to say." "What's this one about?" I hesitated. Talking about my work with someone outside the publishing world usually led to glazed eyes and polite nods. But something about Richardson's genuine interest made me want to share. "It's about a woman rebuilding her life after losing everything," I said. "Not just material things, but her sense of self. She has to figure out who she is when all the definitions she'd relied on are gone." Richardson leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes focused entirely on me. "That sounds powerful. Does she figure it out? Who she is?" "I'm only halfway through, but I think so. She's learning that she was never just one thing. She's complex, capable of more than she believed. The loss stripped away what other people expected her to be, and underneath, she found something stronger." "I'd like to read that when it's published," Richardson said, and he sounded like he meant it. "You read a lot." "More than people expect," he admitted. Growing up in Red Hook, books were my escape. My mom worked 2 jobs, and I spent a lot of time alone. The library became my second home. I'd read everything I could get my hands on. Hemingway, Fitzgerald, even some Tolstoy when I was feeling ambitious. This surprised me. I'd built certain assumptions about who Richardson was, and none of them included a love of classic literature. What drew you to those writers? I asked. Richardson thought for a moment, his fingers tracing the edge of his coffee cup. They wrote about flawed people trying to navigate complicated worlds. Characters who made mistakes but still searched for meaning. I related to that. Plus, Hemingway knew how to write about courage and fear in ways that felt honest. We talked for an hour about books, trading favorite passages and debating which authors stood the test of time. Richardson quoted entire sections of The Sun Also Rises from memory, and I shared my love for Toni Morrison's laid narratives. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, like we'd been friends for years rather than strangers who'd met under terrible circumstances a week ago. Tell me about Red Hook, I said eventually. What was it like growing up there? Richardson's expression grew distant, nostalgic. Rough but real. This was before the gentrification, when it was still mostly working-class families and warehouses. My mom raised me and my sister alone after my dad left. She worked at a laundry during the day and cleaned offices at night. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Is that where you learned to be so protective? I asked carefully. Taking care of your sister? Partly, he acknowledged. When you're the older brother in a neighborhood where danger is real, you learn young that sometimes you have to be willing to fight. My sister was 10 when some guy at her school started bothering her. Not just kid stuff, real threats. I was 15. I handled it. The way he said handled it suggested a story he wasn't ready to share, and I didn't push. That's when I realized something, Richardson continued. Power matters. Having it or not having it determines everything. I watched my mom work herself to exhaustion because she had no power. I watched families get pushed out of their homes because they had no power. I decided I'd never be powerless again. And now? I asked softly. Now I have power, he said simply. More than I probably should. I use it to protect what matters to me. My family, my neighborhood, people who can't protect themselves. He met my eyes. People like you. The weight of his gaze made my breath catch. There was something in the way he looked at me, like I mattered, like my safety and happiness were things worth fighting for. What about you? Richardson asked, shifting the focus. What brought you to publishing? To stories. I smiled, grateful for the change of subject. I've always believed stories have power. They show us we're not alone in what we feel. When I was younger and things were hard, family stuff, feeling lost, books saved me. They gave me hope that life could be different, better. I wanted to be part of that process, helping people tell their stories, making sure those stories reach people who need them. That's beautiful, Richardson said, and there was no mockery in his voice, just appreciation. It's why I stayed in publishing even though it doesn't pay great, I continued. I edit a lot of stories about resilience, about people overcoming impossible situations. It reminds me that survival is possible, that there's life after trauma. Is that what you're doing? Richardson asked gently. Surviving? Or are you starting to live again? The question hit deeper than he probably intended. I looked out at the park, at the families and the golden leaves and the easy happiness surrounding us. I'm trying to figure that out, I admitted. For 3 years, survival was all I could manage. Now, maybe, I'm ready for something more. But I'm not sure I remember how to just live. How to trust that good things can last. Richardson reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of mine. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of his skin. Maybe we figure it out together, he said quietly. I'm not exactly an expert at the normal life thing either, but I'd like to try. With you, if you're willing. My heart hammered in my chest. This was the moment where I should be careful, where I should remember that Richardson was dangerous, that getting close to him might mean trading one complicated situation for another. But looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there beneath the strength, I realized something important. Richardson wasn't offering to save me or control me. He was offering to walk beside me while we both figured out how to be more than our circumstances had made us. I'd like that, I said, and my hand moved the final inch to touch his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong and gentle. We sat like that for a long moment, holding hands across a cafe table in Prospect Park while the autumn afternoon stretched golden around us. There's a reading at Housing Works bookstore next Saturday, Richardson said. A local author I've been following. Would you want to go? With me? Like a date? I asked, my pulse quickening. Exactly like a date, he confirmed, a smile playing at his lips. Every cautious part of me said to slow down, to be careful. But the part of me that had been locked away in fear for so long said something different. It said yes. It said hope. It said that maybe, just maybe, this dangerous man with his tattoos and his surprising love of literature could be something good in my life. I'd love to, I said. Richardson's smile grew, genuine and warm. Saturday at 7. I'll pick you up. We stayed at that cafe for another hour, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about the community center his family had started in Red Hook, helping kids stay out of trouble. I told him about my dream of writing my own book someday. We discovered we both loved old movies, both preferred walking to driving, both believed that loyalty was the most important quality a person could have. When the sun started to sink lower and the air grew cooler, Richardson walked me home. We took the long route through Park Slope, past beautiful brownstones with their stoops and flower boxes, through streets that felt safe and peaceful. He matched his pace to mine, never rushing, always attentive. At my building, he stopped and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Thank you for today," he said, "for giving me a chance. I know my reputation probably says you should run far away from me." "Maybe I'm tired of running," I replied. Richardson smiled, and he reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was tender, careful, and it made my skin tingle where his fingers brushed. "Saturday," he said. "I'm already looking forward to it." "Me too." I watched him walk away, his confident stride carrying him back down the street until he disappeared around a corner. Then I went inside, my heart lighter than it had been in longer than I could remember. For the first time in 3 years, I was looking forward to something. Not just enduring, not just surviving, but actually anticipating a future that might hold something beautiful. And it terrified me as much as it thrilled me. Saturday arrived wrapped in anticipation and nerves. I changed outfits 3 times before settling on a simple burgundy dress and my favorite leather jacket. When Richardson knocked at 7 exactly, I opened the door to find him in dark jeans and a charcoal button-down that made his dark eyes even more striking. He held a single sunflower. "You mentioned these were your favorite," he said, handing it to me. "That day in the park when we were talking about childhood memories." I had mentioned it, barely in passing while describing my grandmother's garden in Seattle. The fact that he remembered, that he'd paid attention to such a small detail, made warmth spread through my chest. "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. "Let me put this in water." The reading at Housing Works bookstore in Soho was everything I loved about New York's literary scene. The space was cozy, filled with used books and the kind of people who valued stories. We found seats near the back, and when the author began reading from her novel about immigration and identity, I felt Richardson's complete attention on the words. During the question and answer session, Richardson raised his hand. Your main character chooses to embrace both her old world and her new one rather than picking one. Can you talk about that decision? The author's face lit up. That's exactly the heart of the book. We're told we have to choose, to assimilate or stay separate. But identity isn't binary. We contain multitudes. Richardson nodded thoughtfully, and when he caught me looking at him, he smiled. What? Nothing, I said. Just, you're full of surprises. Good surprises, I hope. The best kind. After the reading, we walked through Soho streets, past art galleries and late-night cafes. Richardson told me about the books that had shaped him, the characters he'd seen himself in, the stories that had given him hope when his world felt small and limited. I never thought I'd meet someone who understood why books matter so much, I admitted. Most people see them as entertainment. But you get it. You see them as survival tools. They are, Richardson said simply. They taught me there were other ways to be, other possibilities beyond what I saw around me. Even if I couldn't always choose those paths, knowing they existed made a difference. Our first official date at the River Cafe the following week took my breath away. The restaurant sat right on the water with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the Brooklyn Bridge in all its illuminated glory. Richardson had reserved a table by the window, and as we settled in, the bridge's lights reflected off the East River, creating a scene so romantic it felt almost unreal. This is incredible, I said, unable to take my eyes off the view. The view is spectacular, Richardson agreed, but when I looked over, he was watching me, not the bridge. Over dinner, we talked about everything. Richardson asked about my family, and I told him about my parents in Seattle, about my older sister who was a teacher, about the grandmother who'd raised me to believe in myself. They must miss you, Richardson said, being so far away. I miss them too, I admitted, but I needed distance to feel safe. Sean knew where they lived. I couldn't risk leading him to them. Richardson's expression darkened slightly. He really hasn't contacted you again? Nothing. Not a single message. It's been 3 weeks of complete silence. I paused, then added, Thank you for that. For making it stop. You don't need to keep thanking me, Bridget. Yes, I do. You gave me my life back. Richardson reached across the table, and this time I met him halfway. Our fingers intertwined naturally, and the candlelight flickered between us, casting dancing shadows across our joined hands. Tell me something you've never told anyone, he said softly. I thought for a moment. I want to write a book. Not just edit them, but write my own. I've been afraid to try because what if I'm not good enough? What if I spend years on it and it's terrible? What if you spend years on it and it's brilliant? Richardson countered. What if you have a story in you that could change someone's life the way books changed yours? You really think I could do it? I know you could, he said with absolute certainty. I've seen your passion for stories, the way you talk about characters and meaning. That passion doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from having something to say. No one had ever believed in me like that. Not with that kind of unwavering confidence. It made me want to be brave enough to try. Your turn, I said. Tell me something you've never told anyone. Richardson was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, more vulnerable. I want out, he said. Not completely. I'll always take care of my people, always protect what's mine. But the life I lead, the things I do, I want to build something legitimate, something I can be proud of, something that doesn't require looking over my shoulder. I want a future that's about more than just power and control. What's stopping you? Fear, maybe. This is all I've known since I was 16. Building something new means risking what I've built. But lately, he looked at me, his eyes holding mine. Lately I've been thinking some risks are worth taking. The weight of what he wasn't saying hung between us. We were both standing at crossroads, both considering whether we were brave enough to choose something different. On a crisp November Sunday, Richardson surprised me by picking me up early in the morning for what he called an adventure. We drove north into the Bronx, finally arriving at Wave Hill, a public garden perched on a hill overlooking the Hudson River. I didn't even know this place existed, I said as we walked through the gates. Most people don't. It's one of the city's best-kept secrets. The gardens were stunning even in late autumn. We wandered through paths lined with the last of the season's flowers, past greenhouses filled with tropical plants, finally emerging at a viewpoint that took my breath away. The Hudson River stretched below us, and across the water, the Palisades rose in rocky majesty. The fall colors were at their peak, painting the landscape in fire. We sat on a bench overlooking the view, and Richardson put his arm around me. I leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. "My sister got married, hey?" Richardson said quietly. 5 years ago. It was right after I'd helped her get away from the guy who was hurting her. She was so happy that day, so free. I remember standing there watching her, thinking that this was what power should be used for. Not to control or dominate, but to protect the people you love so they can be happy. "That's beautiful," I said. "I want that," Richardson continued. "I want to be the kind of man who builds beautiful things instead of just guarding dangerous ones. I want to wake up and not have to be constantly on alert. I want peace." I turned to look at him. "You'll find it. You're already finding it." "You think so?" "I know so. You're not the same person you were, Richardson. You're choosing something different every day. That takes courage." He kissed my forehead, a gesture so tender it made my eyes sting with unexpected tears. We sat there for an hour, watching the river flow and the clouds drift across the autumn sky, simply being together in the quiet beauty of that hidden place. Our late-night walk across the George Washington Bridge happened almost by accident. We'd been having dinner in Washington Heights, and Richardson suggested we walk off the meal. Before I knew it, we were on the pedestrian walkway of the massive bridge, the city sprawling below us in a galaxy of lights. "I'm afraid," I admitted as we walked. The height, the darkness, the vastness of everything made it easier to be honest. "I'm afraid that I don't know how to do this, how to be with someone without losing myself." "What does that look like to you?" Richardson asked. "Being with someone? I don't know anymore. With Sean, every day I became smaller. He took pieces of me until I didn't recognize who I was. I'm just starting to find myself again, and I'm terrified of losing that." Richardson stopped walking and turned to face me. Below us, the Hudson River flowed dark and endless. Around us, the bridge cables created patterns against the night sky. "Listen to me, Bridget. Really listen. I'm not here to make you smaller. I'm here to watch you grow into everything you're meant to be. If being with me ever makes you feel less than who you are, I want you to tell me. And if you need space, time, distance, anything, I'll give it to you. No questions, no guilt." "You mean that?" "I mean every word. Love isn't about possession. It's about freedom. It's about caring for someone enough that their happiness matters more than your own wants. The word love hung between us, unacknowledged but present. Neither of us was ready to say it out loud yet, but it was there, growing stronger every day. "I'm starting to trust you," I said. "Really trust you. And that scares me more than anything." "Trust is terrifying," Richardson agreed. "But it's also the only way to really live." "I'm scared too, Bridget. Scared that I'll mess this up, that I'll disappoint you, that you'll realize I'm not good enough. But I'm willing to be scared if it means being with you." We continued walking, hand in hand, talking about our fears and hopes until we reached the other side of the bridge. The conversation flowed as easily as breathing, and I realized this was what safety felt like. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of someone who held your fears with care. The dinner on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx showed me yet another side of Richardson. We walked into a small Italian restaurant that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1950s, and immediately people started greeting him with genuine warmth. "Richardson, it's been too long." An older woman emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Mama Rosa, you look beautiful as always." Richardson kissed her cheeks, then turned to me. "This is Bridget. Bridget, this is Rosa. She makes the best pasta in New York City." Rosa's eyes lit up as she looked at me. "So this is the girl making you smile again. Come, come, I'll make you something special." Throughout the dinner, people stopped by our table. The owner who Richardson had helped start the business 10 years ago. The server whose college tuition Richardson was quietly funding. The cook whose family Richardson had protected from a dangerous landlord. Each person treated him with respect, yes, but also with genuine affection. "They love you," I observed after Rosa had brought us a complimentary dessert. "I love them too," Richardson said simply. "These are my people. Not because they work for me or fear me, but because we take care of each other. That's what community means." Watching him interact with them, seeing the way he remembered everyone's names and asked about their families, I saw the man he was beneath the dangerous reputation. He was loyal, protective, generous in ways most people would never know. Over the following weeks, our relationship deepened in countless small ways. Richardson remembered that I loved old movies, so he surprised me with tickets to a classic film series at the Film Forum. I learned he had a weakness for chocolate chip cookies, so I baked them for him, and his face lit up like a child's. He never pushed me physically, never demanded more than I was ready to give. Our kisses were tender, exploratory, building slowly. When I pulled back, he respected it immediately. When I leaned in, he met me with gentleness and passion in equal measure. "You're so different from what I expected," I told him one evening as we sat in my apartment, him reading while I worked on a manuscript. "Different how?" "Sean was always demanding my attention, my time, my everything. You're comfortable with silence. You let me work without making me feel guilty. You have your own life and interests. It's refreshing and a little surprising." Richardson looked up from his book. "That's not love, Bridget. That's control disguised as love. Real love means being comfortable in your own skin so your partner can be comfortable in theirs. It means building a life together, not consuming each other." These were the moments I fell for him. Not the grand gestures or the protection or the expensive dinners, but the quiet evenings, the comfortable silences, the way he saw me as a complete person rather than an object to possess. I was learning the difference between control and care. Sean had monitored my every move out of possessiveness. Richardson checked in because he genuinely cared about my well-being. Sean had isolated me from others. Richardson encouraged me to reconnect with old friends, to build new relationships, to have a life beyond just him. For the first time in years, I felt safe. Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe. Safe to be myself, to voice my opinions, to say no, to take up space. Richardson's love wasn't diminishing me, it was helping me bloom into who I'd always been meant to be. And that, I was learning, was what real love looked like. December transformed New York City into something magical. Overnight, it seemed, the entire city draped itself in lights and possibility. Star windows displayed elaborate holiday scenes, street vendors sold roasted chestnuts, and everywhere you looked, people moved with a kind of hopeful energy that only this time of year could bring. Richardson and I had been seeing each other for nearly 2 months, and what had started as cautious exploration had grown into something I could no longer deny or diminish. He'd become part of my daily life, morning texts that made me smile, lunch breaks spent together when our schedules aligned, evenings that stretched into nights filled with conversation and comfortable silence. On the first Saturday of December, Richardson picked me up bundled in his leather jacket with a thick scarf wrapped around his neck. His breath formed clouds in the cold air, and his cheeks were slightly flushed from the temperature. "Ready for some holiday magic?" he asked, his eyes bright with excitement. "Where are we going?" "Bryant Park. I know it's touristy, but there's something about the winter market that makes me feel like a kid again." We took the subway into Manhattan, emerging near the New York Public Library. The famous stone lions wore wreaths around their necks, and the park behind the library had been completely transformed. The winter market stretched across the space, dozens of small wooden kiosks selling everything from handmade jewelry to artisanal foods. White lights were strung everywhere, creating a canopy of stars above the market. At the center, the ice skating rink was filled with people gliding across the ice with varying degrees of skill. "This is beautiful," I breathed, taking it all in. "Come on," Richardson said, taking my hand. "Let's explore." We wandered through the market, stopping at booths that caught our interest. Richardson bought me a pair of handmade earrings from a jeweler in Brooklyn. I found a vintage book of poetry for him, its leather cover worn soft with age. We sampled hot apple cider and shared a plate of Belgian waffles topped with whipped cream and strawberries. The cold bit at our faces, but Richardson kept me warm, his arm around my shoulders as we walked. Every so often, he'd pull me closer, and I'd catch him watching me with an expression that made my heart race. "What?" I asked, smiling up at him. "Nothing. Just happy." "Me too." We found a vendor selling hot chocolate, and Richardson ordered 2, insisting on extra marshmallows for both. We stood near the ice rink, watching skaters circle the ice. Some were graceful, executing perfect turns and glides. Others clung to the railing, laughing at their own clumsiness. A little girl in a pink coat held her father's hand, taking careful steps while he encouraged her. "Do you skate?" I asked Richardson. "Not well, but I'm willing to embarrass myself if you want to try." I laughed. "Maybe next time. Right now, I'm perfectly happy just watching." We found a bench slightly away from the main crowd, beneath one of the enormous trees that lined the park. From here, we could see the entire market, the lights reflecting off every surface, the happy chaos of people enjoying the season. Richardson was quieter than usual, and I noticed the way he kept glancing at me, then away, like he was working up the courage to say something. "Everything okay?" I asked. He nodded, but his jaw was tight. "Yeah. I've been thinking about something. About us." My stomach flipped. "Okay." Richardson turned to face me fully, and I saw something in his expression I'd never seen before. Nervousness. This man who faced down dangerous people without flinching, who commanded respect with his presence alone, looked genuinely anxious. I'm not good at this, he started. At talking about feelings, about what things mean. My whole life, I've been taught to keep everything locked down, to never show vulnerability because that's when people hurt you. You don't have to, I began, but he gently interrupted. No, I do. Because you deserve to know. You deserve honesty, even when it's hard for me to give it. He took both my hands in his, and I could feel the slight tremor in his fingers. These past 2 months with you have been the best of my life, Richardson said, his voice low and intense. Every morning I wake up thinking about you. Every decision I make, I find myself wondering what you'd think. You've made me want to be better, to build something beyond what I've always known. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I'm falling in love with you, Bridget, he continued, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them back for too long. Maybe I've already fallen. I don't know the exact moment it happened. Maybe it was that first night when you looked at me with trust despite having every reason to be afraid. Maybe it was in the park when you talked about stories like they were the most important things in the world. Maybe it was watching you exist in your apartment, so comfortable in your own space, so completely yourself. Tess pricked my eyes, but I didn't interrupt. I needed to hear this. All of it. I know my life is complicated, Richardson went on. I know I come with baggage and danger and a past that's not pretty. I know you deserve someone simpler, someone safer. But I can't help how I feel. And I need you to know that loving you doesn't mean owning you. It means celebrating every part of who you are. It means supporting your dreams and respecting your boundaries and giving you space to become whoever you want to be. His voice cracked slightly on the last words, and I saw the raw vulnerability in his eyes. This powerful, dangerous man was laying his heart bare, taking the biggest risk of his life. I don't expect you to say it back, Richardson added quickly. I just needed you to know. Because keeping it inside was eating me alive, and you've taught me that honesty is worth the risk of getting hurt. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Emotions flooded through me. Joy, fear, wonder, hope. All these weeks, I'd been so careful, so guarded, telling myself not to fall too fast or too hard. But the truth was, I'd been falling since that night beneath the Brooklyn Bridge. Maybe even since that moment in the park when he'd quoted Hemingway and looked at me like I was someone worth knowing. Richardson, I said softly, and his name felt perfect in my mouth. Do you know what Sean used to say to me? He'd say I love you constantly, multiple times a day. But those words were chains. They came with expectations and demands. His love made me smaller, quieter, less. Richardson's expression fell slightly, and I realized he thought I was about to reject him. But you, I continued, squeezing his hands. You've shown me what love actually looks like. It looks like remembering that I love sunflowers. It looks like encouraging me to write even when I'm afraid. It looks like comfortable silence and respect for my space. It looks like introducing me to your family and your community, letting me see all the parts of you. The hope returning to his eyes gave me courage. You've made me feel safe for the first time in years. Not just physically safe, but safe to be myself. Safe to take up space, to have opinions, to say no when I need to. You've shown me that real love doesn't cage people. It sets them free to become who they are meant to be. Richardson's breath caught. I'm falling in love with you too, I said, and saying it out loud felt like flying and falling at the same time. I think I've been falling for a while, but I was too scared to admit it. Too scared that if I let myself love again, I'd lose myself again. But loving you doesn't make me smaller. It makes me braver. It makes me want to take risks I never thought I could take. Bridget, Richardson whispered, and my name had never sounded so beautiful. I love you, I said again, stronger this time. I love your complexity and your contradictions. I love that you quote Hemingway and fund college educations. I love that you're dangerous and gentle, powerful and vulnerable. I love who you are and who you're trying to become. Richardson's eyes shone with unshed tears. Say it again. I love you, Richardson Lanford. He pulled me close, his hands framing my face with a tenderness that made my chest ache. For a moment, we just looked at each other, letting the truth settle between us. Then he leaned in, and his lips met mine. The kiss was everything I'd imagined and nothing I could have prepared for. Tender at first, almost reverent, like he was memorizing the moment. Then deeper, more passionate, as weeks of restrained desire finally found release. His hands moved to my back, pulling me closer, and I wrapped my arms around his neck, losing myself in the taste of hot chocolate and promise. Around us, the world continued. People laughed and shopped and skated. But we existed in our own bubble, finally acknowledging what had been building since the moment we met. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, I realized it had started snowing. Soft, fat flakes drifted down from the dark sky, catching in Richardson's hair and on his eyelashes. The lights of Bryant Park reflected off the snow, making everything sparkle like we were inside a snow globe. It's snowing, I said unnecessarily, laughing at the perfect timing. Like a movie, Richardson agreed, his smile wider than I'd ever seen it. A really good one. He kissed me again, softer this time, and I felt the promise in it. A promise of protection without possession, of love without chains, of freedom to be myself while choosing to be with him. I can't believe this is real, I whispered against his lips. That you're real. I'm real, Richardson assured me. And this is real. Whatever happens, whatever comes next, we'll face it together. If you want that. I want that, I said. I want all of it. I want movie nights and literary debates and family dinners. I want comfortable silences and deep conversations. I want to watch you become who you're meant to be while you watch me do the same. I want everything with you. Everything, Richardson repeated, testing the word. I like the sound of that. We stayed in Bryant Park for another hour, walking through the market hand in hand, kissing under the lights, drinking more hot chocolate until we were warm from the inside out. The snow continued to fall, dusting the city in white, transforming Manhattan into a winter wonderland. When Richardson finally walked me home, we took the long route, neither of us wanting the night to end. At my door, he kissed me one more time, long and slow and full of promise. Thank you, he said softly, for trusting me, for loving me, for seeing past what I am to who I want to be. Thank you for showing me what love should feel like, I replied, for being patient while I learned to trust again, for choosing me. Always, Richardson promised. I'll always choose you. After he left, I stood in my apartment looking out at the snowy Brooklyn streets, my heart so full it felt like it might burst. For 3 years, I'd been running from a man who claimed to love me. Now I'd found a man who actually knew what love meant. Love wasn't possession or control. Love was freedom and trust and choosing each other every single day. Love was Richardson's nervous confession and my brave response. Love was standing in the snow in Bryant Park, finally believing that good things could last. I touched my lips, still feeling the ghost of his kisses, and smiled. This was what I'd been running toward all along. Not safety from something, but safety with someone. Not escape, but arrival. Not surviving, but truly living. And it was more beautiful than any story I'd ever read. After that snowy night in Bryant Park, something fundamental shifted between us. The declaration of love had removed the last berries, and we settled into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Most evenings found us in my Williamsburg apartment, existing in the kind of comfortable silence that only comes with true intimacy. Richardson would stretch out on my couch with whatever book he was currently reading. He'd move from Hemingway to Toni Morrison at my recommendation, while I sat curled in my armchair editing manuscripts. The only sounds were the turning of pages, the clicking of my keyboard, and the occasional sip of tea or coffee. Sometimes I'd glance up to find him watching me, a soft smile on his face. "What?" I'd ask. "Nothing. Just memorizing this. You, in your element, completely at peace. I want to remember it." These moments felt more intimate than any grand gesture could. This was real life, real love. Not fireworks and drama, but quiet contentment and the deep satisfaction of being with someone who made existing feel easier. We talked about the future now, carefully but with growing confidence. Richardson was serious about transitioning his business interests toward legitimate enterprises. He spent hours on the phone with lawyers and accountants, figuring out how to disentangle himself from the darker aspects of his life while still protecting the people who depended on him. "It's complicated," he admitted one night, setting down his phone with a frustrated sigh. "I can't just walk away without leaving people vulnerable. But I also can't keep doing this forever. There has to be a middle path." "You'll find it," I assured him. "You're one of the smartest people I know. If anyone can figure out how to do this right, it's you." Richardson showed me more of his world, not the dangerous parts but the good he'd built within it. He took me to the community center in Red Hook that his family had founded 15 years ago. The building was modest but well-maintained, with a basketball court, computer lab, and tutoring rooms. "We started this after my sister graduated high school," Richardson explained as we walked through the halls. "We wanted kids in the neighborhood to have options, to see possibilities beyond the streets. It's not much, but it's helped a lot of families." A teenage girl emerged from one of the tutoring rooms and her face lit up when she saw Richardson. "Mr. Lanford, I got accepted to CUNY. Full scholarship." Richardson's smile was genuine and proud. "That's amazing, Jasmine. I knew you could do it. Your mom must be thrilled." "She cried for like an hour," Jasmine laughed. "Thank you for helping with my essay. You were right about making it more personal." After Jasmine left, I turned to Richardson. "You helped with her college essay?" He shrugged, almost embarrassed. "I help out with the tutoring sometimes. A lot of these kids don't have anyone at home who understands the college application process. It's not a big deal." "It is a big deal," I said, taking his hand. "You're changing lives, Richardson. That matters." Watching him interact with the kids and families at the center, I saw yet another layer of who he was. He was patient with the children, encouraging with the teenagers, respectful with the parents. This was power used for good, strength channeled into building rather than destroying. In turn, I showed Richardson something I'd been afraid to share with anyone. Late one night in my apartment, I handed him my laptop with shaking hands. "I started writing," I said. "Just a few chapters of something that might become a book. You don't have to read it now, or at all, really. I just thought maybe." "I'd love to read it," Richardson interrupted gently, "if you're comfortable sharing it with me." I sat nervously while he read, watching his face for any reaction. The story was deeply personal, about a woman finding herself after escaping an abusive relationship. It was raw and honest, and letting Richardson see it felt like letting him see directly into my soul. When he finally looked up, his eyes were shining. "Bridget, this is incredible. Your voice is so strong, So authentic. This is exactly the kind of story that needs to be told. You really think so? It's not too much. It's perfect, he said firmly. It's real and painful and hopeful all at once. You need to keep writing this. Promise me you'll finish it. His belief in me gave me courage I didn't know I had. Over the following weeks, I wrote more, and Richardson became my first reader, offering thoughtful feedback that made the story stronger. He never tried to change my voice or soften the hard parts. He just encouraged me to dig deeper, to be braver, to tell the truth even when it hurt. Richardson invited me to his Tribeca penthouse on a cold January evening. I'd been curious about where he lived, having spent so much time in my modest apartment. The building was sleek and modern, with a doorman who greeted Richardson warmly. "Evening, Mr. Lanford. Good to see you." "You too, James. This is Bridget. She'll be around a lot, so make sure she has access whenever she needs it." The casual way he included me in his life, giving me keys and access codes without hesitation, showed a trust that still amazed me. His penthouse took up the entire top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing stunning views of the Hudson River and the New Jersey skyline beyond. But what struck me most wasn't the luxury, it was how warm the space felt. Books lined every available wall. Real art hung throughout, not expensive pieces chosen by a decorator but works that clearly meant something to him. A photograph of his mother and sister sat on a table by the window. His leather jacket hung by the door like he'd just walked in from a normal day. "This isn't what I expected," I admitted. "What did you expect?" "Black leather furniture and a shark tank." I laughed. "Maybe something like that. But this feels like a home, not a showpiece." "Because it is home," Richardson said, pulling me close. "Or it was. Lately, home feels more like wherever you are." We cooked dinner together that night, working side by side in his modern kitchen. Richardson was surprisingly skilled, moving with the same confident efficiency he brought to everything else. We made pasta from scratch, laughing when I got flour on his nose, kissing between stirring and tasting. "I could get used to this," I said as we sat down to eat, the city lights twinkling below us. "Good," Richardson replied, "because I plan on doing it often." We created traditions without meaning to. Sunday morning bagels from the shop on Bedford Avenue, always with extra cream cheese. Friday night movies, taking turns choosing, arguing good-naturedly about whether action films counted as cinema. The way Richardson would text me a single sunflower emoji every morning, just to make me smile. Inside jokes developed, references only we understood. Richardson called me Sunshine after I'd mentioned loving bright mornings. I called him Bookworm after finding him reading at 3 in the morning, too absorbed to sleep. We had songs that became ours, places that held special meaning, a whole language built just for us. The physical intimacy between us grew naturally from the emotional connection we'd built. Every kiss was deeper, more meaningful. Every touch carried intention. We couldn't seem to stop reaching for each other, his hand on my back as we walked, my fingers tracing the tattoos on his arms, the way we'd gravitate toward each other in any room. One evening in late January, as we lay on his couch watching snow fall over the Hudson River, Richardson ran his fingers through my hair and said, "I never thought I'd have this. Someone to just exist with. Someone who makes ordinary moments feel extraordinary." I tilted my head to look up at him. "Me neither. I thought I'd spend my whole life running, looking over my shoulder. But with you, I can finally stand still. I can finally just be." "I love you," he said, like he still couldn't quite believe he got to say it. "I love you too," I replied, the words easier every time. We talked about everything in those quiet hours. Richardson shared stories from his childhood that he'd never told anyone, the fear of not knowing if they'd have enough money for food, the pride of watching his mother graduate from night school, the moment he decided he'd do whatever it took to make sure his family never struggled again. I told him about the shame I'd felt leaving Sean, the guilt of not seeing the signs earlier, the nights I'd spent wondering if I'd ever feel normal again. Richardson listened without judgment, just holding me while I worked through the emotions I'd kept buried for so long. "You're the bravest person I know," he told me. "Walking away from someone like that, rebuilding your entire life, learning to trust again. That takes more courage than anything I've ever done." "I don't feel brave," I admitted. "Brave people never do. That's what makes them brave. We built trust brick by brick, moment by moment." Richardson gave me complete access to his life, his phone password, his calendar, his bank accounts. Not because I asked, but because he wanted me to know he had nothing to hide. "I never want you to feel uncertain about me," he explained. "I want you to know that what you see is what you get. No secrets, no surprises." I reciprocated, sharing passwords and plans, introducing him to my coworkers, FaceTiming with my family in Seattle so they could meet him. My sister loved him immediately, my mother was cautiously approving, and my father asked pointed questions about his intentions that Richardson answered with honest directness. "I love your daughter," Richardson told my father over the video call. "I plan to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of that gift." After the call ended, Richardson looked nervous. Did I say the right things? I've never done the meet the parents thing before, even virtually. "You were perfect," I assured him. "They can see what I see. That you're a good man who loves me." "I am a good man with you," Richardson said. "You make me want to be the best version of myself." On a particularly cold February evening, we were cooking in my apartment when Richardson's phone rang. His expression changed when he saw the caller ID, becoming more guarded. "I need to take this," he said apologetically. "Business." He stepped into the bedroom, and I tried not to listen, but his voice carried. The conversation was brief, his tone firm and final. When he returned, he looked tired. "Everything okay?" I asked. Richardson sighed. "Someone I used to work with is trying to pull me back into something I walked away from. I made it clear that chapter 2 of my life is closed. Is it dangerous? Should I be worried?" "No," he said firmly, pulling me into his arms. "I've made my position clear to everyone who matters. My focus is building something legitimate, something good. Anyone who has a problem with that can deal with me directly, but you're not in danger. I'd never let anything touch you." I believed him, not because I was naive, but because I'd seen the care he took to separate his past from our future. He was methodically closing doors, burning bridges, making choices that protected what we were building together. "Thank you for telling me," I said, "for not keeping me in the dark." "I promised you honesty," Richardson reminded me, "even when it's complicated. Especially when it's complicated." These were the moments that deepened what we had. Not just the romance and passion, but the trust and communication and daily choice to be honest even when it was hard. We were building something real, something that could weather storms because it was founded on solid ground. Late one night, lying in Richardson's bed with the city quiet below us, I traced the tattoos on his arm and asked about their meanings. "This one," he said, pointing to a rose wrapped in thorns, "represents my mother. Beautiful and strong, but with defenses she needed to survive. These geometric patterns are for my sister. She loves math and order. And this one." He showed me a phrase in elegant script running along his inner form. I'd seen it before, but never been close enough to read it. "What does it say?" I asked. To thine own self be true, Richardson read. Shakespeare. I got it when I was 21, reminding myself that no matter what I had to do to survive, I couldn't lose who I was at my core. Have you succeeded? I asked softly, in staying true to yourself. Richardson was quiet for a moment. I'd lost my way for a while. But then I found you, and you reminded me who I wanted to be. So yes, I think I'm finally getting back to that truth. I kissed the tattoo, then his lips, pouring everything I felt into that connection. The trust, the love, the gratitude for this complicated, beautiful man who'd shown me that second chances were real. I love every part of you, I whispered. The strength and the vulnerability, the power and the gentleness. All of it. And I love all of you, Richardson replied. The survivor and the dreamer, the editor and the writer, the woman who's brave enough to build a new life and trust again. You're everything I never knew I needed. We fell asleep tangled together, the city lights casting soft shadows across the room, building our future one quiet moment at a time. February brought an unexpected chill that had nothing to do with the weather. I was at Richardson's penthouse on a Wednesday evening, having just finished editing a particularly emotional chapter of my manuscript, when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a name I didn't recognize, but Richardson's expression changed instantly when he saw it. I need to take this, he said, his voice tight. He stepped onto the balcony despite the cold, closing the door behind him. Through the glass, I watched his body language shift. His shoulders tensed, his free hand clenched into a fist. His jaw worked like he was grinding his teeth. This was the Richardson I'd glimpsed only once before, the dangerous man beneath the surface, the one who'd faced down Sean without flinching. When he came back inside 10 minutes later, his entire demeanor had changed. The warmth in his eyes had been replaced by something cold and calculating. What's wrong? I asked, setting down my laptop. Richardson was quiet for a long moment, clearly debating how much to tell me. Finally, he sat down heavily on the couch, running his hands through his hair. Sean's been making moves, he said flatly. According to my sources, he's been hiring private investigators, reaching out to people in my world, trying to find leverage. He's obsessed with getting back at both of us. My stomach dropped. How long has this been going on? A few weeks, apparently. I only just found out because one of the investigators he approached came to me instead. He wanted me to know what Sean was planning. Fate tried to claw its way up my throat, but I pushed it down. I'd lived in fear for too long. What is he planning? Richardson's expression darkened. He wants to hurt you through me. He's been looking for information he can use, anything that might separate us or put you in danger. He's told people he won't rest until he's made us both pay for humiliating him. The old Bridget would have panicked, would have started planning her escape to yet another city. But I'd changed. Richardson had helped me find my strength again. What are you planning to do? I asked carefully, already sensing the answer. Richardson stood and walked to the window, his back to me. When he spoke, his voice was ice. I'm going to handle it. Permanently. There are ways to make people disappear, Bridget. Ways to ensure they never bother anyone again. Richardson. No, he cut me off, turning to face me. His eyes held that lethal quality I'd seen the night we met. You don't understand what men like Sean are capable of. He won't stop. He'll keep coming, keep threatening, keep obsessing until someone stops him. And I'm not going to wait for him to hurt you. I stood and walked over to him, placing my hands on his chest. I could feel his heart racing beneath my palms, could sense the violence he was holding back. Look at me, I said firmly. Richardson's dark eyes met mine, and I saw the war happening inside him. The instinct to protect through force versus everything we'd built together. I understand you want to protect me, I continued. I love that about you. But this isn't your fight to win with violence. This is my fight, and I need to win it my way. Your way won't stop him. My way takes away his power, I interrupted. Richardson, Sean's entire identity is built on control and dominance. Violence from you would feed that. It would make him a victim in his own mind, give him a story where he's the wronged party. But if I face him legally, systematically, and take away everything he thinks makes him powerful, that breaks him. Richardson's jaw clenched. And if it doesn't work, if he comes after you anyway, then your way becomes the backup plan, I said. But let me try first. Please. I need to do this. I need to face him not as a victim, but as someone who's taken back her power. The internal struggle played across Richardson's face. I could see how much it cost him to even consider stepping back, to trust my approach when his instincts screamed for immediate, decisive action. I can't lose you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. If something happened to you because I didn't act. Nothing will happen to me, I said with certainty, because you'll be there, not fighting my battles for me, but standing beside me while I fight them myself. That's what I need from you, Richardson. Your support, not your violence. He pulled me close, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. You're asking me to go against every instinct I have. I know, and that's exactly why it matters. You love me enough to let me be strong, even when it scares you. That's real love. Richardson was quiet for a long time, just holding me while he wrestled with his demons. Finally, he pulled back and looked at me with eyes that held both fear and respect. Okay, he said. We do it your way. But the second I think you're in danger, all bets are off. Deal, I agreed. Over the next 2 weeks, we worked together in a way that brought us closer than any romantic gesture could have. Richardson connected me with a lawyer he trusted, a woman named Patricia Chen who specialized in stalking and harassment cases. She was sharp, experienced, and had no tolerance for men like Sean. We're going to build an ironclad case, Patricia explained at our first meeting in her office near Union Square. Restraining orders are just paper. What we need is leverage that makes Sean understand that coming near you means losing everything he values. We gathered evidence methodically. I provided every text message, every email, every documented interaction with Sean. Richardson's investigators, the legitimate ones he used for background checks on potential business partners, dug into Sean's business dealings and found irregularities that, while not quite illegal, would destroy his reputation if made public. He's been lying to investors about property values, Richardson reported one evening as we worked side by side at his dining table, papers and laptops spread between us. He's over-leveraged on several projects. If the right people found out, his whole empire could collapse. Is it enough? I asked. Combined with your documentation of his stalking and threats. Yes, we can give him a choice, leave you alone permanently and get help, or face both criminal charges and financial ruin. Working together like this revealed new dimensions to our relationship. Richardson respected my input, never tried to take over or handle things without consulting me. When I felt overwhelmed, he'd make tea and sit with me until I was ready to continue. When he got too aggressive in his planning, I'd remind him we were seeking justice, not revenge. You're good at this, Richardson observed one night. Strategic thinking, seeing the big picture. You'd make a good... He stopped himself. A good what? I prompted. He smiled slightly. I was going to say you'd make a good leader in my world. But that's not the life I want for you. Or for us. No, I agreed. But I appreciate the compliment. Late one evening, as we finalized our strategy with Patricia over video call, Richardson reached over and took my hand. The simple gesture steadied me, reminded me I wasn't alone in this. After the call ended, I turned to him. Thank you for trusting me on this. For letting me handle it my way even though it goes against everything you know. You were right, Richardson admitted. This is your battle. I'm learning that protecting you doesn't always mean fighting for you. Sometimes it means standing beside you while you fight for yourself. That's exactly what I need, I said, kissing him softly. A partner, not a savior. Partners, Richardson repeated, testing the word. I like that better anyway. We set the meeting for the first week of March, at Patricia's office in Midtown Manhattan. Sean was told that if he didn't attend, criminal charges would be filed immediately. The trap was set. Now we just had to see if he'd walk into it. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. Richardson held me in his bed, running his fingers through my hair while I voiced every fear. What if he doesn't care about the evidence? What if he's so obsessed that nothing matters anymore? Then we moved to Plan B, Richardson said calmly. But I don't think it'll come to that. Men like Sean are bullies. They are strong when they are picking on someone weaker. But face them with real consequences, real power, and they fold. You really believe that? I know it. I've seen it 100 times. Sean's entire identity is built on being successful, being respected, being in control. We're offering him a choice. Walk away with his reputation intact, or lose everything. He'll choose self-preservation. I wanted to believe him. I had to believe him. Because the alternative was going back to running, back to fear, back to letting Sean control my life even from a distance. Whatever happens tomorrow, Richardson said softly, you're not alone. I'll be right there. And you're going to be amazing. How do you know? Because you're the strongest person I've ever met. You survived Sean once already. Tomorrow, you're going to defeat him. His absolute confidence in me gave me strength. I fell asleep in his arms, dreaming of freedom. The morning of the meeting, I stood in Richardson's bathroom staring at my reflection while I applied minimal makeup. I'd chosen my outfit carefully the night before, a navy blue suit that projected professionalism and strength, paired with a silk blouse in cream. My hair was pulled back in a neat bun. I looked capable, confident, powerful. Everything Sean had tried to make me believe I wasn't. Richardson appeared in the doorway, already dressed in a dark suit. He looked every inch the formidable man he was, but his eyes held only warmth and support when he looked at me. You look perfect, he said. Strong. Ready. I'm terrified, I admitted, my hand shaking slightly as I tried to fasten my necklace. Richardson stepped behind me and took over, his fingers steady as he closed the clasp. In the mirror, our eyes met. Being terrified and doing it anyway is the definition of courage, he said. You've got this, Bridget, and I've got you. We took a car into Manhattan, the winter morning bright and cold. The city was alive with people heading to work, tourists bundling against the chill, life continuing in its beautiful, ordinary way. In a few hours, I'd be able to be part of that normalcy again. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. Patricia's office was in a building near Rockefeller Center, where the famous Christmas tree had stood just weeks ago. Now the plaza was filled with ice skaters, their laughter floating up even to the 20th floor where we stood. Through the conference room windows, afternoon light poured in, making the space feel open and clean. Professional. Neutral territory. He'll be here in 10 minutes, Patricia said, arranging documents on the conference table. "Remember, Bridget, you don't have to speak to him directly if you don't want to. I can handle everything." "No," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "I need to do this. I need him to see that I'm not afraid anymore." Richardson sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched, but he remained silent. This was my moment, and he understood that. His presence was support, not interference. Strength I could draw on, not strength that overshadowed my own. When the door opened and Sean walked in, my heart lurched. He looked exactly as I remembered. Expensive suit in charcoal gray, designer watch glinting on his wrist, hairstyle to perfection. But something was different. His confidence seemed forced, his smile not quite reaching his cold eyes. His gaze swept the room, landing first on Patricia with dismissal, then on me with that familiar possessive intensity, and finally on Richardson. I saw the moment recognition hit, saw his face pale slightly. "What is this?" Sean demanded, trying to regain control. "I was told this was about settling our differences, Bridget, not about bringing hide muscle. Mr. Lanford is here as Ms. Parkin's partner and support," Patricia said coolly. "Please, sit down. We have matters to discuss." Sean remained standing, his hands clenched at his sides. "I don't know what you think you're doing, Bridget, but this is ridiculous. We can work this out between us. We don't need lawyers," and his eyes flicked to Richardson with poly-concealed fear, whatever he is. "Sit down, Mr. Horton," Patricia repeated, her voice leaving no room for argument. Sean sat, but his body language screamed aggression. He was like a cornered animal, dangerous and unpredictable. I felt Richardson tense beside me, ready to act if needed, but I placed my hand on his thigh under the table. A reminder, my fight. Patricia opened the folder in front of her. "Mr. Horton, you're here because you've engaged in a pattern of stalking and harassment toward Ms. Parkin that has persisted for 3 years. Despite a restraining order filed in Oregon, you've continued to track her movements, contact her through various means, and have recently escalated by hiring investigators to gather information about her current life." "That's not," Sean started. "We have documentation," Patricia continued, sliding papers across the table. "Text messages, emails, testimony from the investigator you approached, records of your travel to New York specifically to find Ms. Parkin. We also have evidence of assault from your time together in Portland, including medical records and photographs of injuries." Sean's face flushed red. "She's lying. She's always been dramatic, making up stories." "I'm not lying," I said, my voice cutting through his protests. "And we both know it." Sean's eyes snapped to mine, and I saw him trying to use that intimidating stare that had once made me crumble. But I wasn't that woman anymore. "You hurt me, Sean," I continued, keeping my voice steady. "You controlled me, isolated me, and made me believe I was nothing without you. But I got away. I built a new life, and you can't accept that because your entire identity is built on control." "I loved you," Sean hissed. "I gave you everything." "You gave me nothing but fear," I interrupted. "That wasn't love. It was ownership, and I'm not your property." Patricia laid out more documents. "We also have information about certain irregularities in your business dealings, Mr. Horton. Misrepresentations to investors, inflated property valuations, leveraging that exceeds legal limits. If this information were to reach the right people, the SEC, your investors, the media, your career would be over." Sean's face went from red to white. "You're threatening me? You can't." "We're offering you a choice," Patricia said calmly. Option 1. You sign a permanent restraining order with enhanced penalties. You agree to mandatory therapy for a minimum of 2 years. You cease all attempts to contact, locate, or gather information about Ms. Parkin. You never speak her name, never think about her, never enter the state of New York again. In exchange, the criminal charges we're prepared to file and the business information we've gathered stays private. And option 2? Sean asked, his voice tight. Option 2. We file criminal charges for stalking, harassment, and violation of the existing restraining order. We release the information about your business practices to every relevant authority and media outlet. We pursue civil damages for the years of trauma you've inflicted. Your reputation, your business, your freedom, all of it goes away. The silence in the room was absolute. Outside, I could hear the faint sounds of the city, car horns, distant voices, the normal soundtrack of life continuing. Inside, Sean's world was collapsing. "This is insane," Sean finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You can't do this to me. I have rights." "So does Miss Parkin," Patricia said. "Rights you violated repeatedly. Now you get to choose. Walk away and maintain your life, or fight and lose everything." Sean looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before: desperation. Real fear. For 3 years, he'd been the one with power, the one making threats, the one in control. Now, faced with actual consequences from people who weren't afraid of him, he was exposed as what he really was. "Bridget," he tried one more time, his voice taking on that pleading quality I remembered. "Please, we can work this out. I made mistakes, but I can change. We were good together once." "No," I said simply. "We were never good together. You were controlling and I was too afraid to leave. That's not a relationship. That's captivity." I watched something break in Sean's expression. The last vestige of his delusion that I would come back, that he could win, that he was somehow the victim in all this. He looked around the room, at Patricia's professional detachment, at Richardson's quiet menace, at me sitting straight and strong, and finally saw the truth. He'd lost. "Where do I sign?" Sean asked quietly, all the fight gone from his voice. Patricia slid the documents across the table. Page after page of legal language that all added up to one thing: Sean had to let me go. Permanently, completely, irrevocably. I watched his hand shake as he signed each page. This man who'd made me shake with fear for so long was trembling as he signed away his obsession. The reversal would have been satisfying if I'd had any energy left for satisfaction. Mostly, I just felt tired and ready for it to be over. When the last signature was complete, Patricia gathered the documents efficiently. "These are now legally binding, Mr. Horton. If you violate any term, and I mean any term, the criminal charges will be filed immediately, and all the information we've gathered becomes public. Do you understand?" "I understand," Sean muttered. "Ms. Parkin, do you have anything you'd like to say?" Patricia asked me. I looked at Sean one final time. Really looked at him, seeing him clearly for the first time in our entire relationship. He wasn't a monster. He was just a small, insecure man who'd used money and manipulation to feel powerful. He'd hurt me terribly, yes, but he'd never actually been the unstoppable force I'd believed him to be. His power had always been an illusion, sustained only by my fear. "I forgive you," I said, and I meant it. Not for him, but for me. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to be free of the anger and fear you represent. I hope you get the help you need, Sean. I hope you learn that real strength comes from building people up, not tearing them down. But mostly, I hope I never have to think about you again. Sean looked like he wanted to say something, but Patricia gestured to the door. You're dismissed, Mr. Horton. Please leave now. He stood on shaky legs and walked to the door. At the threshold, he paused and looked back at me one more time. I met his gaze steadily, no fear left in me. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded like the end of a chapter. The moment he left, my composure crumbled. Tears streamed down my face, but they were tears of relief, of release, of victory. Richardson pulled me into his arms, holding me while I shook. You did it, he murmured into my hair. You were incredible. So strong, so clear. I'm so proud of you. It's really over? I asked, my voice muffled against his chest. It's really over, Patricia confirmed. Those documents are binding. If he violates them, he loses everything. And men like Sean value their status and money more than anything else. He'll stay away. We left the office building 15 minutes later, stepping out into the crisp winter afternoon. The sun was bright, reflecting off the buildings and making me squint. Across the plaza, tourists took photos in front of the ice skating rink. Children laughed, lovers held hands. Life continued in all its beautiful normalcy. Richardson took my hand as we walked through Rockefeller Center. How do you feel? I thought about it, really examining the emotions swelling inside me. Fear was there, yes, but it was fading. Relief was strongest, along with something else. Something light and buoyant that I hadn't felt in years. Free, I said, the word coming out like a prayer. I feel completely, totally free. You are free, Richardson said, stopping to face me. Around us, the city moved and breathed and lived. You took back your power, Bridget. You faced your fear and won. That's all you now. Your strength, your courage. I looked up at this man who'd stood beside me through all of it, who trusted me to fight my own battle even when it went against every protective instinct he had, who'd loved me enough to let me be strong. Thank you, I said, for believing in me, for supporting me without taking over, for being exactly what I needed. Always, Richardson promised, and he kissed me right there in the middle of Rockefeller Center while tourists and New Yorkers swelled around us and the winter sun shone down. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't planning my next escape. I was just living, just being, just free. And it was more beautiful than I'd ever imagined. Spring arrived in New York like a gift. After the long, cold winter, the city transformed overnight. Cherry blossoms exploded in Central Park, painting the sheep meadow in clouds of pink and white. Outdoor cafes reopened their sidewalk seating, and suddenly everyone was outside again, faces turned toward the sun, soaking up the warmth and possibility that came with the changing season. Without Sean's shadow hanging over us, my relationship with Richardson flourished in ways I'd never imagined possible. We spent weekends exploring every neighborhood in the city, from the hipster cafes of Bushwick to the historic streets of Greenwich Village. We took the ferry to Governor's Island and rented bikes, racing each other along the waterfront with the Statue of Liberty watching over us. My manuscript was nearly complete, and Richardson had read every word, offering encouragement and insight that made the story stronger. His business transition was progressing well, with more legitimate investments and fewer connections to his old life. We were both becoming the people we'd always wanted to be, and we were doing it together. One Saturday in April, Richardson picked me up with a nervous energy I'd rarely seen from him. "Where are we going?" I asked as we headed toward the Verrazzano Bridge. "Staten Island," Richardson said. "I want you to meet my family. Properly, I mean. Not just video calls or quick hellos. I want you to see where I come from. Meet the people who made me who I am. My stomach flipped with a mixture of excitement and nerves. Are you sure? That's a big step. I'm sure, Richardson said, reaching over to take my hand. They already love you from what I've told them. But I want them to know you. Really know you. The drive across the Verrazzano Bridge was stunning, the water sparkling below us and the city skyline stretched out behind. We drove through Staten Island's neighborhoods until we reached Todd Hill, an area of beautiful homes with sweeping views. Richardson's family home was a large, well-maintained house with a gorgeous garden out front. Before we could even get out of the car, the front door flew open and a woman emerged, Richardson's mother, I realized, seeing where he got his dark eyes and strong features. Finally, she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug before I could even introduce myself. I've been waiting to meet the woman who's made my son smile again. Mom, let her breathe, Richardson said, but he was grinning. His sister appeared next, a beautiful woman in her 30s with Richardson's same commanding presence softened by warmth. I'm Elena, she said, shaking my hand. And these terrors are my boys. 2 young boys, maybe 7 and 9, barreled out of the house and immediately attached themselves to Richardson, who scooped them both up with ease. Uncle Rich, did you bring your motorcycle? Can we go for a ride? Later, maybe, Richardson laughed. First, I want you to meet someone very special. This is Bridget. The boys regarded me with a serious assessment only children can manage. Are you Uncle Rich's girlfriend? The older one asked. I am, I confirmed. Are you going to marry him? Marcus, Elena scolded, but Richardson and I just laughed. We'll see, Richardson said, but his eyes met mine with a look that made my heart skip. Inside, the house was filled with warmth and life. Family photos covered every surface. Richardson and Elena as children, graduations, birthdays, moments of joy captured and treasured. The smell of cooking filled the air, and Richardson's mother immediately pulled me into the kitchen. You help me finish dinner, and you tell me everything, she said. I want to know all about the woman who's captured my son's heart. Over the next hour, while we prepared pasta and salad and garlic bread, I talked with Richardson's mother about everything, my work in publishing, my writing, how Richardson and I had met, a carefully edited version that emphasized his heroism, what I loved about her son. He's different with you, she said at one point, her eyes misty. Lighter. For so long, he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. He felt responsible for everything, for everyone. But with you, he laughs more. He hopes more. You've given him permission to want something beyond survival. He's given me the same gift, I said honestly. He taught me what real love looks like, what real strength is. She squeezed my hand. Then you're perfect for each other. Dinner was chaotic and loud and absolutely wonderful. The boys told elaborate stories about school and soccer. Elena shared embarrassing childhood stories about Richardson that made him groan and me laugh until my sides hurt. Richardson's mother watched over everything with obvious joy, so clearly happy to have her family together. After dinner, Elena pulled me aside while the boys were showing Richardson their latest video game achievements. Can we talk for a minute? She asked, leading me to a quiet corner of the living room. Of course. Elena's expression was serious but kind. I need to thank you for what you've done for my brother. I haven't done anything. I started, but she shook her head. You have? You've given him a future worth fighting for. After what happened to me, after Richardson did what he had to do to protect me, he shut down emotionally. He built these walls, convinced himself he didn't deserve normal things like love and happiness. He threw himself into being strong, being powerful, being the protector. But he forgot to be human. She paused, her eyes getting teary. Then he met you. And suddenly, he's talking about the future. About legitimate businesses and maybe having a family someday. About peace. You've reminded him that he's more than what he does, more than the power he wields. You've shown him he deserves love. He's shown me the same thing, I said, my own eyes stinging. I was so broken when we met, so afraid. He put me back together, piece by piece, just by respecting me and believing in me. Then you really are perfect for each other, Elena said, hugging me tightly. Welcome to the family, Bridget. Because whether my brother has officially asked you yet or not, you're already one of us. As the sun began to set, Richardson took my hand and led me out to the terrace. The view was breathtaking. New York Harbor stretched out before us, the Verrazzano Bridge spanning the water in graceful curves, and beyond it, the Manhattan skyline glittering in the golden light. We stood at the railing, and I felt Richardson's nervousness in the way he kept shifting his weight, in the way his hand trembled slightly in mine. This view, he said, I grew up looking at this. Every morning, every night. My mom used to bring Elena and me out here and tell us that somewhere across that water was our future. That we could be anything we wanted to be, go anywhere we wanted to go. The world was bigger than our neighborhood, bigger than our circumstances. He turned to face me, and the setting sun painted him in shades of gold and orange. His dark eyes held mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. I used to stand here and wonder what that future would look like, Richardson continued. I imagined success, power, security, all the things we didn't have growing up. But I never imagined happiness. I never imagined love. I didn't think those things were for someone like me. Richardson, I started, but he gently squeezed my hands. Let me finish, he said, and I heard the nervousness in his voice despite his usual confidence. I know we haven't been together that long. 6 months isn't a lifetime. But it's been long enough for me to know with absolute certainty that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I know my life is complicated, Richardson went on, the words tumbling out like he'd been rehearsing them. I know I come with a past that's not pretty and a reputation that's dangerous. I know I'm still working to become the man I want to be, the man I should have been all along. But Bridget, you make me want to be better. You make me believe I can be better. He took both my hands in his, and I felt them shaking. You've taught me that real love doesn't cage people, it sets them free. That protection doesn't mean control. That strength comes from vulnerability, not from walls. You've shown me what it means to be truly brave, facing your fears even when it would be easier to run. Richardson released one of my hands and reached into his pocket. When he pulled out a small velvet box, tears sprang to my eyes. Bridget Parkin, he said, his voice thick with emotion, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me, messy and complicated as it might be? Will you let me spend every day proving that real love means freedom, not possession? Will you let me love you, support you, stand beside you while you become everything you're meant to be? He opened the box, and I gasped. The ring was stunning, a centered diamond flanked by sapphires that perfectly matched my eyes, set in a delicate platinum band. It was elegant without being ostentatious, beautiful without being flashy. It was perfect. The sapphires, Richardson said softly, they match your eyes. I wanted you to know that I see you, Bridget, really see you. Not just the woman you are now, but the woman you're becoming. And I want to be there for all of it. Tears streamed down my face. 6 months ago, I'd been terrified and alone, convinced I'd never trust again, never love again, never feel safe again. Now I was standing on a terrace in Staten Island with the most unexpected man in the world asking me to spend forever with him. Yes, I whispered. Then louder, yes, yes, I'll marry you, Richardson Lanford. Richardson's face broke into the biggest smile I'd ever seen. His hands were shaking as he slid the ring onto my finger, and when he looked up at me, his eyes were shining with unshed tears. I love you, he said. So much it scares me sometimes. You're everything I never knew I needed. I love you too, I replied, framing his face with my hands. You saved me, Richardson. Not just that night under the bridge, but every day since. You showed me what love should be. You gave me back myself. He pulled me into a kiss that tasted like tears and promises and forever. Behind us, I heard cheering and looked back to see Richardson's entire family at the terrace doors, watching with huge smiles. You knew? I asked Richardson, laughing through my tears. They helped me pick the ring, he admitted. My mom said the sapphires were perfect. His mother rushed out to hug us both, followed by Elena and the boys. We stood there on the terrace as the sun set in brilliant oranges and pinks, the Verrazzano Bridge beginning to twinkle with lights, Manhattan glittering across the water like a city of dreams. Welcome to the family, officially, Richardson's mother said, crying happy tears. My son has finally found his home. Richardson pulled me close, his arm around my waist, and I leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. I looked at the ring on my finger, at the family surrounding us with love, at the city sparkling in the distance, and felt a peace so profound it took my breath away. This was what I'd been running toward all along. Not away from danger, but toward love. Not escape, but arrival. Not survival, but life in all its beautiful, complicated, perfect imperfection. And as the lights of the Verrazzano Bridge reflected off the water and the spring evening wrapped around us with warmth and possibility, I knew with absolute certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. With Richardson, with his family, building a future based on trust, respect, and the daily choice to love each other freely and fully. It was more beautiful than any story I'd ever read, and it was mine. September arrived with that perfect autumn light that only exists for a few weeks each year. The Hudson Valley was transformed into a painter's dream, rolling hills covered in early fall colors, vineyards heavy with grapes ready for harvest, and a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Our wedding day dawned clear and warm, with just enough breeze to keep things comfortable. The vineyard we'd chosen was small and intimate, with views that stretched for miles across the valley. Rows of grapevines created natural aisles, and the ceremony space was set up under an ancient oak tree that had probably witnessed 100 years of seasons. I stood in the small cottage that served as the bridal suite, looking at myself in the mirror. My dress was simple but elegant, flowing silk that moved like water, with delicate lace sleeves and a neckline that was both modest and beautiful. My hair fell in loose waves down my back, held away from my face with small white flowers. I wore the pearl earrings my grandmother had given me, and of course, the engagement ring Richardson had placed on my finger that spring evening. You look beautiful, Elena said, adjusting my veil. She was my maid of honor, and over the past months, she'd become one of my closest friends. My brother is going to lose his mind when he sees you. I'm so nervous, I admitted, my hand shaking slightly. Good nervous or bad nervous? The best nervous, I said, smiling. The kind that comes from knowing your whole life is about to change in the most wonderful way. The ceremony was small, just 30 people, our closest family and friends. Richardson's mother sat in the front row, already crying happy tears. My parents and sister had flown in from Seattle, and seeing them here, supporting this new chapter, meant everything. A few of Richardson's trusted friends stood near the front, along with people from the community center and the restaurant on Arthur Avenue. People who'd seen us both at our worst and were here to celebrate us at our best. The music started, and Elena walked down the aisle first. When it was my turn, I stepped out from under the trees and saw Richardson waiting for me at the altar. He was devastatingly handsome in his tailored navy suit, the jacket cut perfectly to his broad shoulders. His white shirt was crisp, his tie a subtle pattern that matched my dress. But what took my breath away was his face. His dark eyes were locked on me with an intensity that made the rest of the world fade away. His tattooed hands were clasped in front of him, and I could see them trembling slightly despite his usual confidence. My father walked beside me, squeezing my arm gently. "He's a good man," he whispered. "I can see how much he loves you." "I love him too," I whispered back. "More than I ever thought possible." When we reached the altar, my father placed my hand in Richardson's, and I felt that familiar electricity, that sense of rightness that had been there since the beginning. "You're beautiful," Richardson murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "So beautiful it hurts." The officiant began the ceremony, talking about love and commitment and the journey we were beginning together. But I barely heard the words. I was too focused on Richardson, on the way he was looking at me like I was the most precious thing in his world. When it came time for vows, Richardson went first. He took both my hands in his, and I felt them shaking. "Bridget," he began, his voice carrying across the quiet gathering. "6 months ago, you were a stranger in danger. Today, you're my whole world. You've taught me more about love and courage than I learned in my entire life before you." He took a breath, composing himself. "I promise to protect you, but never to cage you. I promise to love you, but never to possess you. I promise to be your partner, your equal, your safe place to land. I promise to celebrate your victories and support you through your struggles. I promise to respect your voice, your choices, your dreams. I promise to give you freedom to become whoever you're meant to be and to grow alongside you into whoever I'm meant to be." His voice cracked slightly on the last words. "Most of all, I promise to choose you. Every single day, in every way that matters, I choose you. Not because I need you to complete me, but because I want you beside me while we both become complete ourselves." Tears streamed down my face as I squeezed his hands. Now it was my turn. "Richardson," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the emotions flooding through me. "You saved my life that night under the Brooklyn Bridge. But more than that, you taught me how to save myself. You showed me that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about being afraid and choosing courage anyway." I looked into his dark eyes, wanting him to see the absolute truth in mine. "I promise to trust you, even when fear whispers doubts. I promise to be your partner in building something beautiful and real. I promise to stand beside you as you become the man you're meant to be, and to never let you forget how good that man already is. I promise to choose you every day, knowing that real love is a choice we make over and over." I took a shaky breath. "Most of all, I promise to be free with you. Free to be myself, free to grow, free to love without fear. Because you've shown me that real love doesn't save people or trap them, it gives them wings." The officiant smiled through her own tears. "Richardson, you may place the ring on Bridget's finger." Richardson's tattooed hands were steady now as he slid the simple platinum band next to my engagement ring. "With this ring, I marry you. Bridget, you may place the ring on Richardson's finger." I took the matching band we'd chosen together and slid it onto his finger. "With this ring, I marry you. By the power vested in me," the officiant said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Richardson, you may kiss your bride." Richardson pulled me close, his hands framing my face with infinite tenderness. "I love you, Mrs. Lanfard," he whispered. "I love you too," I whispered back. Our kiss was soft at first, reverent, acknowledging the sacredness of this moment. Then deeper, more passionate, a promise of everything to come. Around us, our family and friends cheered and applauded, but we existed in our own bubble of perfect happiness. The celebration that followed was filled with laughter and love. We danced under string lights as the sun set over the valley. We ate incredible food and drank champagne and listened to toasts that made us cry and laugh in equal measure. Richardson's mother spoke about watching her son finally find peace. My sister talked about seeing me come back to life after years of just surviving. Elena shared stories about Richardson as a protective older brother that made everyone laugh. And through it all, Richardson and I couldn't stop touching each other, couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop marveling at the fact that this was real. As the evening wound down and stars appeared in the darkening sky, Richardson pulled me onto the dance floor for one last slow dance. "How does it feel?" he asked, holding me close. "Being married?" "Like coming home," I said simply. "Like everything finally makes sense." "That's exactly how it feels," Richardson agreed, kissing my forehead. Our honeymoon was a drive up the New England coast, just the two of us and the open road. We meandered through Connecticut's coastal towns, stopped at seafood shacks in Rhode Island, and finally made our way to Maine. No schedule, no pressure, just the freedom to explore and be together. Bar Harbor was our final destination, a charming coastal town that felt like stepping back in time. On our last morning, Richardson woke me while it was still dark. "Come on," he said. "I want to show you something." We drove up Cadillac Mountain in the pre-dawn darkness, the road winding through pine forests. At the summit, we weren't alone. A handful of other early risers had gathered, all waiting for the same thing. Cadillac Mountain is the first place in the United States to see the sunrise, Richardson explained, wrapping a blanket around both of us as we stood at the viewing area. "I wanted us to be among the first people in America to see this new day. Our first full day as husband and wife." The sky began to change, shifting from deep purple to indigo to a brilliant pink. The ocean stretched out before us, endless and dark. Behind us, mountains rolled away into shadow. We stood wrapped in each other and the blanket, waiting. "Do you have any regrets?" Richardson asked quietly. "About marrying me, about the complications that come with my life." I turned to look at him, this man who still carried wounds and doubts despite all the evidence of how good he was. "Not a single one." "Do you?" "Never," he said immediately. "Marrying you is the best decision I've ever made. The only one I'm completely certain about." "Then we're both exactly where we're meant to be," I said. The sun broke over the horizon, and the world exploded in color. Brilliant oranges and pinks painted the sky, turning the ocean gold. Light spread across the landscape, revealing the beauty that had been hidden by darkness. It was breathtaking, transcendent, perfect. "It's like watching the world be born again," I whispered. "That's what you did for me," Richardson said, pulling me closer. "You brought light into my darkness. You showed me life could be beautiful, not just survived." We stood there as the sun rose higher, the sky shifting through shades of gold and blue, and I felt a completeness I'd never experienced before. This was what I'd been searching for all along. Not someone to save me, but someone to stand beside while we both found our way. The life we built together over the following year was everything we dreamed of and more. We bought a brownstone in Park Slope with a blue door I'd painted myself. Richardson's business transition was nearly complete. He divested from most of his questionable holdings and was building a portfolio of legitimate real estate investments and community development projects. He was proud of the work he was doing now, building things instead of just protecting them. My manuscript was accepted by a publisher, and I cried happy tears when Richardson opened the champagne to celebrate. The book wouldn't come out for another year, but knowing my story would reach people who needed it made all the fear of writing it worthwhile. We created a life filled with simple pleasures and deep joy. Sunday morning bagels from our favorite shop, evening walks through Prospect Park, dinner parties with friends where Richardson would surprise everyone with his cooking skills, quiet nights reading side by side, existing in comfortable silence. Family gatherings that grew louder and more chaotic as Richardson's nephews got older and my sister had a baby we both adored. On our first anniversary, we returned to the spot near the Brooklyn Bridge where everything had begun. The evening was misty, just like that night a year ago, and the Manhattan skyline sparkled across the East River. A year ago, I was standing right here, terrified and certain my life was ending, I said, looking at the exact spot where Sean had grabbed me. I couldn't have imagined that a year later, I'd be back here with a husband I love more than anything. A year ago, I was just passing through, Richardson said, standing beside me at the railing. If I'd been 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, I would have missed you. We would have missed this. Do you believe in fate? I asked. Richardson considered. I used to think everything was random, that we make our own luck through power and control. But meeting you, falling in love with you, building this life, it feels like something bigger than chance. Like maybe we were supposed to find each other. I think so too, I said, leaning into him. I think I had to go through everything with Sean to understand what real love looks like. I had to experience control to recognize freedom. I had to be broken to learn how strong I really was. And I had to meet someone brave enough to see past what I am to who I could be, Richardson added. You've made me better, Bridget. Not by changing me, but by believing I could change myself. We stood there for a while, watching the city we love pulse with life around us. This spot that had been a place of terror was now a place of gratitude. A reminder of how far we'd both come, how much we'd both grown. Ready to go home? Richardson asked. Always, I said. We walked through Brooklyn's familiar streets, past the places that had become part of our story. The cafe in Prospect Park where we'd really gotten to know each other. The bookstore in Soho where we'd had our first date. The streets of Williamsburg where I'd lived when I was still learning to trust. Each place held memories, markers of our journey from strangers to partners to husband and wife. When we reached our brownstone with its cheerful blue door, Richardson lifted me across the threshold even though we'd been living there for months. Every day is a new beginning, he said, setting me down gently in our entryway. Every day, I choose you all over again. And I choose you, I replied, pulling him close for a kiss. That night, lying in bed with the Brooklyn night sounds filtering through our open window, I thought about everything that had brought us here. The fear, the running, the chance encounter that changed everything. Richardson's courage in facing his own demons. My courage in learning to trust again. The daily choice we both made to be honest, vulnerable, open. Real love, I'd learned, wasn't like the fairy tales. It wasn't about being saved by a prince or rescued from a tower. It was about two imperfect people choosing each other, supporting each other, giving each other the freedom to grow. It was about respect and trust and the daily work of building something beautiful together. Real love didn't save you or trap you. It gave you the freedom to become who you were always meant to be. It gave you wings while also giving you a home to return to. It challenged you to be braver, kinder, more honest than you'd ever been before. And as I fell asleep in Richardson's arms, in our home, in our life, I knew with absolute certainty that this was the greatest love story I'd ever been part of. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. From fear to freedom to love, that was my journey. And I wouldn't change a single step of it, because every step had led me here. To Richardson, to us, to this beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect life we were building together. One choice, one day, one moment of love at a time. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this message of hope and second chances. Subscribe to our channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. Tomorrow we have another incredible story dropping that you won't want to miss. Your support helps us continue bringing these powerful stories to life. Thank you for watching.